So after months of waiting and waiting, the Post finally released around my area. It released in limited release, I believe, back on Christmas Day, and finally opened wide. I was able to get around to seeing it. I've been pretty excited to see this movie. I'm always willing to get out to the theater to see a Spielberg film, and with this one making as much noise as it has, I figured it was kind of important to go see this movie. It has a great cast, great writers behind it, and obviously an incredibly talented director behind it. This movie was sort of really set up for success. And walking out of it, my impression of it was it's good. It's nothing crazy. It's nothing phenomenal. But it's a good movie. It does its job, but there are some issues with it that I've found to be more glaring than I had expected, and I don't know why they happen, but I'll sort of get into that after I talk about what I liked about this movie, because there is some really good stuff. I guess I want to talk about how the movie's kind of inconsistent, because sometimes the writing and the dialogue is really, really good. And it's clever, and it's intellectual, but it's not pandering. It's not too smart for the audience. It's not the writers, acting like they are above the audience and that they have to look down upon us and write it as if we're lesser people, like some movies do. They write this movie like we're equal to them, and so we understand it, and it's compelling. That's what the movie really has going for it, is how compelling it is. It's a really interesting story. But when there's that kind of writing, there's also some really, bad, cheesy, stuff you wouldn't expect to see in a movie like this. A professional-grade biopic with millions of dollars behind it and Spielberg behind the camera. There are some lines in this that are just, so corny and so 70s movies, and then they'll have these, They'll pop a one-liner that's really bad, and all the characters go, ha 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 ha! And it's not only is it poorly directed, but it's poorly acted. So it's unusual to see the movie switching constantly between these two things, which is why you're sort of always I don't really know how I feel about the script, and that doesn't just come with the script. There's some stuff with direction, too, that I did not like. I thought he made some really odd choices in terms of cheesiness, and, things would come across as just kind of laughable, and not... It's I just recently watched Hacksaw Ridge, and I really didn't like it, because the entire first half of the movie is just garbage. It's cheesy, it's poorly written, some of it's laughable acting, and it's not that level with this movie, because at least it's kind of weighed out by good writing and good direction, because there's some really good direction in this movie too, but there are a couple of shots even that are what the hell are you guys doing? There's one where Bob Odenkirk is calling someone on the phone, and the camera just and then zooms in on him like it's a fucking documentary. And I went with friends who don't know that much about movies, and even they were like, what the hell was that? He made some odd choices that I feel like they may have had a weird shooting schedule, and maybe they wanted things to be different at a time, and then they weren't, but they didn't do reshoots. There are times where you feel like this movie, they were rushed to make it. I know they did this entire thing in 6 months, and sometimes you can kind of tell. I don't know, it feels like they were just trying to get to the end of the shooting day. And it's odd because it shouldn't be like that. There's also, I've heard this complaint, and I did not think this was going to be true, but it is. There's this really, really weird Vietnam sequence at the beginning that looks like $20 million of the $50 million budget was put into that sequence. It's out of place. It didn't really need to be there. It's odd. I don't know. I always felt off, because every time good dialogue or good direction would come up, I kind of knew it would be followed by a bad scene or a scene that's not very well written. Now, what I will say is this is a problem that's more prominent in the first half of the film than the second half. The second half, they start getting to this level of intensity and tension, and that's when the story really becomes gripping as opposed to just informational. And that's when you really start getting into the movie and paying more attention and rooting for characters and on the edge of your seat. And but these problems are mainly prominent within the first half of the film, so at least it kind of catches itself, but it's still, you've got this first half of the movie that's relatively inconsistent with itself. The performances are actually all really great. They all, like, none of them go really above and beyond, but they all do their jobs. These parts weren't necessarily written to have stellar performances. They're written to be real people with real problems, and we're rooting for them the whole way through because they're faced with this impossible situation. And they all bring those characters to life. Meryl Streep and Tom Hanks are great, and then you've got Bradley Whitford, you've got David Cross, Bob Odenkirk, Jesse Plemons, like, it's Carrie Coon, Sarah Paulson. They all do their job. They don't exactly have anything crazy to do, which I think it might be why they're not getting nominated for for many awards. And I think maybe Meryl Streep would be, or could be, left out of the slew of nominations just after having seen the movie. And I think Tom Hanks definitely will be. I think that was just a mistake on my part to put him in my predictions, but they all do a really great job just sort of doing what they were assigned to do. It's like Spotlight. All of the actors and performers in that movie do their job. But Mark Ruffalo and Rachel McAdams should not have been nominated for Oscars because they're just kind of talking. Like, they're bringing a really good script to life. I would argue the performances in this movie are better because they have a little more depth to work with. You get a little more about their characters. But it's still kind of just like a baseline, okay, these performers are going to do the best they can do to bring these characters and dialogue to life. It's not like they really have to, you know, go crazy with it or do anything nuts. But they do a good job with that. The movie never feels low budget. It looks great. It's a really good looking movie. I like the cinematography of it a lot, except for like those couple shots that I pointed out, which are just really weird, and I don't know what happened there or what Spielberg was thinking when he did those, but for the most part, that's really good. The production design is really great. The score is pretty strong. I guess I'll go back to the production design. Like some of the stuff they set up, I mean, it's pretty spot on. You never feel like you've left this time period. That's always pretty great. Like, that's pretty consistent. In that regard, the technical aspects of this movie are very consistent. So at least there's kind of something to latch onto, and be happy that you're able to, you know, look at the screen nicely for the entire time. And like I was talking about the story, I mean, what this movie really has going for it is an intricate story with characters who add to it. You know, you've got this baseline story about Vietnam and these papers and the government lying to the country, but then when you start layering it up with these characters and, you know, the whole Meryl Streep has to make this decision based on the fact that her entire legacy and her family has owned this company. Like, that's when you start, things become more interesting, especially when you get to the latter half of this film, when the New York Times is barred from publishing and they have to start making these decisions and they're all kind of clashing heads. That's where the movie's really gripping and interesting and cool to watch. You're really seeing this story come to life. And I would say the movie is worth the price of admission just for that last half of the movie, even though there's some ridiculously cheesy shit in the first half. There are some great, like, long takes and ways to get you really into this film and this story. And, like, I don't know, it's so hard to talk about this movie because while there's some really great stuff about it, it's instantly kind of paralleled by stuff that's not very good and stuff that's poorly put together. I would still go so far as to call it a good movie because I was into it. I was engrossed in the story, and it was coupled by great performances and moments of good writing and good direction. Like Sarah Paulson's monologue is really good, but it's not going to win any Oscars. It'll probably still be nominated for some, though. But I say it's worth seeing, again, just for that second half of the movie, which is really great, and I think worthwhile to see. So that's my take on The Post. what did you guys think? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Let me know in the comments below. In the upcoming days and weeks, I'm going to be coming out with my Phantom Thread review, which I finally got to see, and that was the last award season film I needed to see. Before the nominations come out, I'm going to be releasing a video about my choices for what I would nominate at the Oscars. I have my list done. I just have to shoot the video. And then the SAG Award live stream is going to be next Saturday, the 21st, I believe, or next Sunday, is it? Which is the 21st. It's going to be very similar to the Golden Globe live stream for those of you who watch that. So come tune into that if you're interested to see my reaction to the wins. And then I will do a reaction video to the nominations on the 23rd when those release. So lots of good stuff coming up. I'm very excited to do more videos and content. So look out for that stuff in the future. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you all next time.